Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to talk about Docker engine and Docker architectures. So let's talk one by one. So in once you'll install the Docker in in your local PC or like in server or in the cloud or Mac, you will be get that in Docker daemon which is installed like in that in which will work as the server, and then the another component will be like in internally installed like in REST API, which is kind of a services, and then Docker client. So like in Docker daemon, which is server, and the communications will be happen with the Docker client with help of a REST API. So other than that, we have a different features, or like in we can say that in a object, like network. So that will be managed by that in that in initially client, and the client will be send the request with help of a REST API, and server will be do that in required operations on that. Similarly, we have a container, so it will be managed image. It will be managed by that in Docker CLI, and that in data volumes will be managed by that in CLI with help of a REST API, and the server will be do that in required operations, as a daemon thread. So just in high level, just understand it, but there is a n number of other objects is also there and operations, and like in inside that in Docker engine, and we'll talk one by one. For initially, just understand that in there is a three components will be there. First one, like in a Docker daemon, which is the server. Second one, like in REST API, which will be make a communications between the server and the client, and the client Docker CLI will be, of course, it will be there for the end user. So let's talk about the more into that in Docker architecture. So in more details, if you'll see that in what client is doing, the client is nothing but it's just performing that in Docker command, which is we can say the build, pull, push, run, and many more. And it's going to that in Docker daemon, and Docker daemon is like on basis of the command, it's going to that in, if you'll see that in first command is Docker build, which is dot dot, and dot dot is going to be now in build that in images, and once images is built, it will be either push into the container, or it will be go to that in a Docker daemon, so like in a other way. And second one, we have a some dot dot without that in like in a only simple dot. So it's like in a Docker pull. So it's a Docker pull is going to be help of requesting to the Docker daemon. Docker daemon is identifying that in and sending to that in registry, like in your one, or like in Docker hub, and pulling that in mention that in registry, and it will bring into that in internal container, load into that in internal, like in Docker host, and then it will be utilized. A third one, if you'll see that in Docker run, so once you'll do that in Docker run, so if you'll see that in symbol is going to be different, and it is going to that in choosing that in a particular images, and it will making that in workable into that in a container, and that will be available to that in end user. So in high level, like in what we discussed, that is sufficient for now. We'll understand that in more details, but in top level, just understand that in Docker architectures, minimum three things will be there, which is like in client for end user use. End user meanings like in developer or like in IT operations, not for like an end user who is going to utilize the applications. And Docker host, which is that in contains that in a Docker daemon, where we'll have images or containers, and Docker daemons will be also communicate to that in a client, to that in registry, or like in Docker daemon with help of REST API, and it will be get that in respective like in response. So that's all about in these lectures, and thanks for watching.